Hello, and welcome to the Unplug live podcast. And this time we have an incredible speaker. This is a masterclass on tiny shifts. And I am introducing you to Elisha Goldstein, PhD, who yesterday blew my mind when I heard him speak and maybe even changed my life forever. And I'll tell you how you did that in a second. I met Elijah when we opened up Unplug 14, almost 13 years ago with his wife, Stephanie Goldstein, who's a therapist. And she was probably one of the first teachers at Unplug Meditation. And just the two of them blew me away. Elijah is a great best-selling author. In fact, this book is a bestseller. He's coming to Unplug live on Sunday. So if you want to meet him in the flesh and you are living in Los Angeles, you can be here. And yesterday, when I heard him speak, I could not stop taking notes. And then this morning, I have not put his book down and I'm pretty much underlined every single thing in his book. This book is so good. And I wish I had it right before I scorched the village at my son. Yeah, the other day. Everything would have been different. But now that you're here, welcome to the Unplugged Masterclass. Hello, Elijah.
Hey, so great to be here. Thanks for all those words, Susie.
Well, you are so smart. And I could not believe what an incredible speaker you were yesterday. Every single thing that came out of your mouth, I thought you were talking only to me until I looked to the person to my right and the person to the left, and they felt the exact same way. And then I spoke to some people that were across the way, and they felt the same way too. So I want to talk about this book, Tiny Shifts, this incredible book. This is number what in your books? How many books have you written?
It's the sixth book. However, what I always say about that is I took a break from writing books for about 8 years. And so it felt like, okay, all right. It feels almost like a whole new, it feels like my first book all over again. But yeah, that's where it is.
Well, I think I'm seeing some of our unplugged teachers on here, and I just want to tell you this should be mandatory reading because there are so many incredible tools and techniques to shift your state. And you talk about so many different things that we have all experienced in our lives. And I really want to ask you some questions and just talk about some of the things that you said yesterday that I know are in the book. Um, and maybe let you just go. But one of my favorite things that you were talking about was emotional pivots.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So,
And
yep.
I'll just like drop a couple sound bites that you did, and then I'm going to let you go. Emotional intelligence, emotional contagion.
Hmm.
Your calm becomes contagious, tiny pivots. Um, and then you ask the most incredible question, which was, where does stress show up for you in your life and how do you handle it? And the one message that I got that I wanted to tell you that might have changed my life forever, which was to listen and care. Sometimes when you talk, people just want you to listen and actually care about what they're saying. Okay, now that I've dropped all those sound bites, I'm going to zip it. And I want you to talk a little bit about this book. Just kind of tell everybody what it's about and the problems that we're all suffering with and the four ways that we can help ourselves.
Okay. And just to give a little context to what Susie's talking about yesterday, I gave a talk in front of a number of people, mostly women, and there was a lot of conversation about the question came with like, what if you have what if you're in a relationship and or a friendship or something, and someone's not really caring about like what you're wanting or needing or anything like that. And so that's where a lot of people in the room are like, yeah, that's me too. That's me too. So some of the value of being in community, of course, many of you know, is that we oftentimes do feel when we're feeling overly stressed in life, or we're not feeling well, anxious, or kind of like in a low mood, our brain goes into this self-referencing mode, and we always think it's like about me, and we feel kind of alone in it. So to get into a group like we're doing right now in this community, or we'll do on Sunday as well when we do our kind of live event there at Unplug, there's a real value to people saying like, oh my God, it's not only me. And what that does is that sends a safety signal to the brain, because when we feel in community, we feel in connection, we tend to feel implicitly safer, which then has a physiological impact, which will lower our heart rate typically, will bring a more regulated breathing when we feel a sense of connection, because of course when we feel safe, we feel better. Tiny Shifts was inspired by my own experience of heading a few years ago, I guess it was just kind of heading towards 50, and wanting to feel healthy, I was starting getting very interested in the field of health and longevity, because I wanted to be active and playful for my kids and all of that. And so I started kind of like taking care of my body more. And so I was on a walk, and I was listening to this physician who had a long history of doing his own work, personal work, and as well as his own research around this. And he'd kind of been dissecting all the research. And about 2/3 through the conversation, he had said that even in doing all this work, he was miserable. He was so stressed out at work. He was snapping at his colleagues at home. He was like turning tables over in his house sometimes because of his anger outbursts. And so he kind of came to this conclusion, and it made sense to me that if you can do all the work, you can think you're doing everything right in life. You're doing everything you can. You're trying to eat right. You're trying to exercise. You're trying to like live well. You're trying to juggle the responsibilities that are all there, and you can still feel overwhelmed by it. And so I came to understand that like emotional health, the ability to be aware of how we're feeling and take care of ourselves in real time in the moment, is actually the cornerstone to our health and longevity. And I was like, okay, I got to like research this more. I got to write about it. And so I started kind of looking at just not just the idea that so many people I speak to right now, whether it's clients or students that I'm working with, or friends or family, really feel a sense that like life is a little bit too much right now. There's a general overwhelm. And so what I came to understand is that many of us are living in this kind of low-grade chronic stress that flies beneath the surface. I have a little story that I tell in Tiny Shifts, where it was this guy, David Foster Wallace. He gave a talk at Kenyon College at like one of their graduations. And some of you might have heard this kind of parable that he created, which was these two young fish kind of swimming in the sea, and they were just kind of swimming along, and then this older fish kind of comes to them and is like, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And they look at each other kind of confused, and they continue on, and one turns to the other and says, "What the hell is water?" And so we're so conditioned right now, we don't even realize the way our nervous system is pulling on our body, and the way our mind is kind of constantly going. Even when we try and rest, our mind won't shut down. So we struggle with sleep issues. We try and soothe ourselves. We go down the road most traveled. Maybe we don't eat exactly like we want to, or maybe we're too tired to exercise sometimes. So all these longevity variables, which is like exercise, nutrition, and sleep, also get impacted because we're just so overwhelmed that we might not be engaging them in the way that we could. And then I started studying, and you might appreciate this, the impact of this on our physiology. And so when we are struggling with this low-grade chronic stress, our body, and again, it's like pulling on our muscles, so we have tension in our bodies, our heart rate is elevated, and our breathing is a little bit shorter. And we start to deal with a little bit more inflammation in our bodies that's there as a result of it. Turns out that if someone does have heart disease issues and they have an anger outburst, studies show that they're 4 times more likely to have a heart attack within the next 2 hours. And so our emotional world is quite important. And so what I came to realize was, if we could be more emotionally aware in the moment, in real time, we could interrupt something that I call the emotional loop. Just kind of interrupt it. It's very simple. We need to do like tiny things that can fly under the radar of like, this is too much. I already got so much to do. And interrupt it and be able to create a resolution to help metabolize the emotion quicker, meaning having it go through us quicker, and be able to refocus on things that are going to actually serve us, or more control in our mind and our lives. And so that's what kind of spawned this book. And And I wanted to make it clear that, as you're kind of going through it, it was very intentionally written. So as you're going through it, there's no lifts. There's no like take 30 minutes out and like do this exercise or like that kind of thing, because we're already too overwhelmed to do stuff like that. It doesn't really we don't really do it if we're
I have
given
to
that
say, I
instruction.
love that. I love that about this book because you don't give us more stuff to do.
Right.
You
Yeah.
just, I love that.
So the idea is that as you're reading it, you are given things called like tiny insights or tiny shifts in actions that just kind of happen. You can kind of do them as you're continuing on the reading. And so, yeah, and they have little like signals next to each one of them. And so that you're actually shifting your state and you're actually learning and getting repetition. I call them emotional reps as you're actually moving through it without having to lift too much, because the brain's not going to deal with it. If we're already in this low grade chronic stress, anytime there's something like, yeah, that's a good idea, I'd love to put that into my life, like there's another party that's going to be like, too much. And so we had to do it very carefully in a way that allowed it to fly under the brain's threat detection, which is like the detection of like, this is too much. I don't want to, this is a good idea, but I probably won't do it. Um, and, and be able to make it like simple to understand and easy to deploy. And we build this emotional strength over time, so we get the sense that like, okay, no matter what comes my way, I can handle it. I'm going to be okay, and I can like pay attention to things that are actually going to serve me and support me, and create more of a spiral up instead of a spiral down.
I love that. Um, as I was mentioning before, there are just so many things that you put in here, but I think you talk a lot about naming emotions so that you're able to understand them and not just kind of making them more vague. And I would love to also have you talk about the 4 R's.
So the 4 R's is really the container for the tiny shifts in this book. And so the 4 R's are stand for recognize, release, refocus, reinforce. And so that's like the container. It's like kind of part two of the book, and it makes it so that we can understand like how to move through a moment that's here. And so when you talk about emotions, recognize is something that is understood in all the world's wisdom traditions talk about this. Psychology talks about this. The field of neuroscience talks about this. And so when you have so many different disciplines overlapping around something and saying, do this thing, there's probably some wisdom behind it. And so recognize is basically saying like, we need to be aware when we're caught in a certain emotional reaction. I call it an emotional loop. I go deeper into like what that is in chapter 2 of the book, but emotional loop is just basically like any given moment we have thoughts, emotions, sensations, and actions happening. Those are the 4 things that are happening in any given moment. When you're scrolling in the corner a little too long, you're having your mind's kind of going through some kind of like there's some kind of like need to soothe anxiety there, or need for some kind of excitement. There's a certain feeling that's happened. Your body's having a reaction. I'll give you an example that I gave yesterday in this talk, and we talk about it in there too. I was sitting there in my corner of my kitchen, and I call it the corner of crap. I was on a call with Mayim Bialik a little while ago, and she's like, I got 5 of those corners in my house. And so that's the kind of corner where everything goes, where you don't know where it's supposed to go, and so where my phone gets plugged into. And so I'm sitting there and I'm returning Amazon returns. I'm transferring points from a credit card to another. I've got, looking over, and I kind of see this laundry piling up. There's just a lot going on. And my younger son at the time comes to me and wants to show me something. He kind of pulls on my shirt. He's like, "Let me show you this, Dad." And I'm like, I got to do it. If you would have seen me, probably my shoulders have been like up to my ears in that moment. I'm like, I'm doing this thing. Hold on, give me a second. And then finally, when I turned to him, he was gone. And so, I don't know. That was probably a far more meaningful moment to pay attention to, because for those of you who have kids or have kids that have already kind of come and gone to college, Suze has that kind of going on. So, you know how this time just kind of comes and goes. And if you don't have kids yet like that, or you don't have kids, that's fine. You just know in other life how life just kind of shifts and changes and time kind of moves on. That's kind of the point. Um, but I think and a more important point here, aside from missing that sacred moment, is that we know that one of the longevity factors in our life, what helps us feel healthy and good in life, is when we have strong connections with other people. And research out of Harvard shows that connections at the epicenter of health and longevity. If you look around the world at different cultures around the world that have high longevity, they do community really well. And so if you have moments of connection that are available to you, but you're too busy doing something else because you're caught in an overwhelm loop, like I was in that moment, then you get disconnection or missed connection. And life is full of moments and they add up. It's like compound interest. And so if you have missed moments, many missed moments on top of each other, you might be impacting your own health and longevity, not to mention your own happiness or just feeling well in life, feeling safe. And so there I was. I kind of missed out on that moment. So I can reflect on that and see it and be aware of that. There's a value in missing things and being able to learn from our history. And so turned out to be a valuable story, to tell too. So that's a piece that I just wanted to kind of share. So that's the recognize piece. So anyway, just to kind of name that, recognize emotions. I do want to kind of make a note around being more aware of our emotions, meaning like if you are walking around and someone says, how are you feeling? You're like, I just don't feel that good, or I feel fine, or I feel kind of bad. Or these are very general terms because we don't grow up with much emotional granularity, being able to kind of know the nuances of emotions. And I'll make a little plug here, and we go deeper in this in tiny shifts on purpose, and I'll tell you the reason behind it. When you're aware that you don't just feel bad, but you feel confused, or you don't just feel bad, but you feel sad, or you don't just feel bad, but you feel frustrated, you're going to get clear on what your underlying need is in that moment. So if you feel bad, but you really feel confused, what you need is clarity, but you're not going to be able to identify it if you just say, I'm feeling fine, or I'm feeling bad. If you're feeling sad about something or disconnected in some way, maybe that's the feeling. Your need might be for connection, or your need might be for loving yourself through this difficult moment that's here. And you can identify that and be able, it's like a puzzle piece. We can be aware of what that is and be able to meet that place, the more emotional granularity we have in here. And so that's why I kind of expand a vocabulary list in here of emotions, so we can get better at learning how to be more granular with that. And then I expand it with another link on my site to give a longer list of that. That's there. So that's the value of recognize. To interrupt the loop, it's as simple as that. And sometimes it's just labeling and noticing any of those areas of the emotional loop, how we're feeling emotionally, what's going on with our body. Could be any of this. That I put my shoulders up here because for me, that's where I hold a lot of tension. A behavior I'm doing, scrolling or shouting at somebody or snapping at somebody. Or it could be a thought I'm having, like I'm such an idiot. Why does this always happen to me? I'll never get this done. That kind of thing. Any one of these places could be a place to interrupt the loop. So that's the first R.
And the rest are.
So, okay. I didn't know how long do you want on a monologue here. So
we're going
good.
through
Okay,
these.
so good. Well, okay, so that's the first one, and I wanted to say it's again I take this idea of these emotional pivots or tiny shifts. It's really like that. That's not a big lift to say this week all I want you to do is see if you can be aware of what loop you're in. Are you in an overwhelm loop? Are you in I hate having to take out the trash loop? Are you in I'm so frustrated with my partner loop? Or do we notice an emotion? Is my body, where's my body bracing? Just kind of something simple. Like I don't have to do anything else. This is all I want to do is make this emotional pivot because I'm trying to train my mind around something right now. Trying to train my mind to make tiny shifts that are here so I can have better stress resilience and show up better in my relationships and impact my health and longevity. So the second R is release. Why do we need to release? If the first R puts us into a space between stimulus and response where we have a bit more choice, like we have okay, all right, I've unhooked from this loop. I got a little more perspective and choice, but it's not really enough typically. our body is having a somatic reaction as a result of that. And this is what most people miss. So most people want to just have awareness and like steer their mind somewhere else. And the reason that doesn't work very well is because when we're wrapped up in an emotional reaction, we're like wound. And so if you try and like just notice that I'm wound and then try and steer your attention, that it's going to just snap back because the wound is too tight. So our body is wound in that moment. And so literally our muscles are reacting from some kind of fight, flight, freeze response, something like that. And so we have to redress that for a second. We have to say like, okay, where am I holding this in my body right now? This anxiety or this frustration or this irritation or just this kind of stress that I'm just holding. And it could be in your face, it could be in your forehead, it could be in your shoulders, it could be in your legs, it could be in your hips, it could be anywhere. And so I'm just kind of noticing that and see if I can do one of two. The main thing is see if I can loosen it a little bit. Just a little bit. We're not trying to make it go away. We're just trying to pivot in a different direction. So rather than being caught in the loop and having it continually wound, we're recognizing it and we're seeing if I can loosen it. So for me, it's like taking a breath and lowering my shoulders and allowing the exhale to be a little longer than the inhale. Why? Because when I lower my shoulders or I massage my jaw or I try and soften the area between my eyes or I try and soften the muscles around my eyes or I try and kind of just shake this thing out for a second, what's happening is we're telling our brain, we're sending safety signals to our brain that like, hey, you're safe enough to relax or you're safe enough to exhale. And we want our mind to feel safe because then we can kind of regain control. We get more blood flow to this part of the brain, which is more involved with emotion regulation and impulse control. We have more choice in the moment. So we're taking that space from recognize and now we're widening it. And that can take all of 10 seconds. So this is like in the moment, like you're walking through the kitchen. You're like, oh my God, I'm feeling so stressed right now, or I'm really upset at my partner right now. I'm kind of noticing that, or my kids, I'm kind of like just snapped at my kids. I'm aware of that. Okay, I'm noticing it. Okay, hold on a second. As I'm continuing to walk, this is like in the moment. It's just enhancing the moments of your life you're already living. I don't need if I find out, you know what, I need a little bit more space and time. That's a choice we're going to make. That's a choice we're going to make in the refocus part. So that's the release. The third R, now that we've been able to regulate a bit more, now we can steer the ship. Now we can steer the ship, not before. So, and I'll say this. If it's a small thing, if you're like, I'm kind of irritated a little bit right now, like, you know, it's like a little thing, you can steer the ship. You can just kind of reframe the thing. That'll work. But typically when we have this kind of chronic stress that's going on, or this low grade chronic stress, or we have a reaction that's happening, we spike up to like a 5 or a 6. And so we do need this release. So we have this release. Now we can refocus. Now I'll just say this about refocus. Our brain is always telling us stuff and it's always asking questions. And AI, which probably most people here use to some degree or another at this point, if you didn't use Google, whatever, prior to that, is always about asking questions. We ask it questions so it can give us answers. Well, we're always asking our mind questions all the time. What's wrong with me? Where is this war going? How bad can this get? How high can gas prices go? Like, how is this going to impact my kids or will my kids even get jobs in the future? That's where my mind goes right now with where everything's going. And so, what's the point of college? Anyway. So we kind of are asking questions and it comes back with answers. Oh, what's wrong with you? Well, how about to start off, like you're not eating well and you sleep, and you snap at your kids and you're a bad parent and whatever, all these things, right? So it'll give us these answers. Now, that's typically part of some emotional loop that's underlying patterns that are kind of conditioned from childhood or from a mood we're in, either way. So what we want to do is we interrupt that, we kind of release a bit the somatic reaction that's happening. So now we can steer the ship with a different question because we want to use it to our advantage. So we ask a question like, let's say if I'm having a tough moment right now, a classic self-compassion question, what we all want to tattoo on our brains, which so many of us have heard before, which is like, in this moment, what do I really need right now? What's going to be most supportive for me in this moment? Now, I want to make a plug here for a very important thing. Part of the reason behind this book is that a lot of people here, including myself, including a lot of people I've worked with over time, we know a lot. We've read a lot of books. We've listened to a lot of podcasts. We've gone to therapy for years. We've, whatever, on and off. We've, we've talked to friends. We even tell our friends the things to do because we know this stuff, right? But we have a hard time doing it in our own life. We just have a hard time accessing it, like our own wisdom. And so what this is allowing us to do is giving us the wherewithal to access things we already know. I call it our natural intelligence. So we can move from artificial intelligence to natural intelligence. I don't even care if part of the natural intelligence is, let me go ask the artificial intelligence. That's fine. Like, if I want to kind of get some kind of other ideas or something like that. So this gives us the ability to access our natural intelligence in the moment, in real time. So we ask ourselves these different types of questions. I have give you a kind of a quick story around this that some of you may have heard if you've heard me talk before, which was like, and I said this yesterday in this event too, but while I was writing this book, I had the fortune of having some difficult things happen to me that I got to really use this work with in real time that inevitably became stories in the book, which is really cool. Looking back on it. In the moment, it didn't feel very cool, but I was like part of a couple years ago, or maybe it was like a little over a year and a half ago now. And so this was like while I was working on this book. I was contacted by some celebrity who wanted to do some big Facebook event on a health panel. And there, it was as I was writing the book, I'm like, it's going to be great exposure. It's so exciting. It's going to be so good for getting the word out about this stuff and all of this. So I got like excited about it. I get on this like tech call, and something's a little weird about it. Like they're not showing their video, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. But I'm like, oh, this is exciting, whatever. I kind of like overlooked that like very simple red flag. But like right after the call was over, and by the way, they had me kind of like make sure my Facebook was set up right. So I was like in the back of my Facebook manager for any of those who have like the business version of Facebook. And so I kind of like changed a couple things back there, with their direction. And then I got the call and I wrote the celebrities team. I'm like, is this you guys? This is so strange. And they're like, literally so fast, scam. This is a scam. This has been happening to other people. Don't give them any information, which I, of course, have already gave them information. What happened to you, Susie? You didn't tell me that. That's so funny. Okay. So it also happened, by the way, as I was talking to some other colleagues about this, like they're like, that happened to me too. Actually, one of the exact same person it happened to. And so I was like, a whole wave of overwhelm came to me because I was like, what just happened? What did I give away? What are they going to steal my identity? Or they get my bank account somehow? Like, what is it? Anyway, as I was doing that, some very strange posts started coming up on my public profile, like weird, just weird stuff. It was just weird. It was just like weird cartoon things. Anyways, I was like, okay, how bad is this going to get? I have my assistant. She's kind of helping me out because I was something that was to support me with this. Finally got to a point where we could get to, I could only do what I could do at that point. And I recognized, I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Let me like walk my talk for a minute here. I'm noticing this overwhelm that's here. I'm aware of where this is in my body. I feel like an expansion that's happening. Like my body's like swelling almost for a moment. My face is feeling that way. And so I noticed my shoulders are up. So I took a couple breaths and I allowed my shoulders to drop for a second, so much so that I can access even that question of like, what's going to most serve me right now in this moment? And I'm like, I have to get outside. I got to get from outside of this computer, and I got to go like outside and take my dogs on a walk and feel the sunshine on my face. And so I take the walk outside, and then something like very quickly comes to me, which is just this massive amount of self-criticism. this massive of this like voice is so mean that like I'm it's almost I'm unfamiliar with how mean these voices, the degree, the intensity, like how stupid I am and how could I fall for this, and like you're smarter than this, and like you saw the flags and you still chose to override them, and like blah blah blah. And I'm like, holy cow, like I'm so mean to myself right now. And so I recognized that I fell into the shame loop. So I was in the anxiety loop, an overwhelm loop. I was able to, so this is part of this work. Just to be clear, what we're doing is we're learning how to metabolize our emotions. So I kind of like was metabolizing the anxiety, and I recognized release. I was able to refocus, and I was noticing some kind of like semblance of balance. And then bam, what caught me was the shame loop. One of the fastest and strongest loops there are is a shame loop. In the brain, it's recorded in the same areas of where stress is, where high stress is recorded. And so it came fast and furious, and I was like, recognize, okay, so there I am. So then that was different when I got to the point of like refocus, which is refocus. Again, refocus is a couple things. We ask our brain questions so it searches for better answers. And then we also allow ourselves to call on things we already know. Again, accessing our own wisdom. And then the third thing is being able to shift the channel. Sometimes we just need to change. That's what I did when I walked outside. I'm like, I just need to shift the channel here. I just need to go do something else, different environment that's here. And what came to me was like I asked myself a different question. I said, with all the meanness that's here right now, can you even be kind to yourself? Is it possible to be kind to yourself right now? And a voice came up and said, yeah, it's possible. Okay, well, what would that look like? Well, I'm going to continue to walk slow. I'm going to put my hand on so I'm in my neighborhood. I'm sure people looking at me, put my hand on my heart. And by the way, because I kind of grew up in this field as like a fan of like neuroscience. I'm a psychologist. I like to understand how things work. Helping understand how the brain works helped me cure my insomnia. It was part of what supported me in helping me sleep better. Because I used to struggle with insomnia in my early 20s. I used to wake up with panic attacks. So it helped me understand how to do that, and I'm happy to talk about any of that stuff. But so in here, can I be kind to myself? I said yes. So I put my hand on my heart. What happens is when you do this, is your brain has to map the sensation of your hand on your body. In order to feel something, you'll see, if I go like this and I had like an fMRI going on, you'd see like lights up like around the area behind our prefrontal region. It would like light up because your brain is like mapping the sensation. That's how you feel it. And so by doing that, there's an inverse relationship, and I talk about this in the book. There's like a seesaw effect between two gears the brain has, a steady gear and a spinning gear. So when our mind is spinning at night, it won't shut off, or we try to rest and it won't shut off. The spinning gear is happening. And what we know is it's like a seesaw. If we can engage the steady gear, if we can just engage it and continue to engage it, there's an inverse relationship. So the spinning gear starts to come down. So typically it looks like is more like kids going on a seesaw where you're like, oh, I'm going to engage this, and the spinning gear comes down, and then it goes back up again, and you're like, but most people say like, oh, this isn't working. But really what needs to happen is we need to continue to come back, recognize, release, refocus to the steady gear, and eventually the steady gear gains strength, like with any repetition. If anybody here are musicians, or you remember how you learned how to drive a car or walk or talk, it was just continued repetition over time made things easier. And that's the brain just memorizing procedures. So that's all that is. And so for me, when I do this and I continue to kind of put my hand to it, you'll notice the chatter starts to come down a little bit. It doesn't make it disappear necessarily. It's not a light switch on or off. It's a inverse relationship. So equally kind of going on, go up when the other one's going down. So that helped quiet things down. Also, the heart is associated with caring and loving, and kindness, which is qualities I really wanted to infuse into the moment because it's what I really needed. So I was continuing to walk, refocus in this way. And then something happened. This shame started to metabolize, started to shift away. So what came? Well, when space opens, something has to fill it. So what came was anger. The reason this is such an interesting story is because, at least to me in my experience, was that of how different emotions came and went and how to relate to them so that they would metabolize, basically. So anger was very appropriate. My house had just been raided, my digital house had just been raided. Someone came in and stole stuff from there. They crossed a boundary. And anger is a healthy emotion to have when someone is kind of crosses your boundaries. It's helpful. And so I was aware of this and allowing this kind of feeling to come and giving it space, like just as I was walking to do this. Can I just allow this to be was a question I asked myself. And so I continued on with it. And really within the next hour of picking up my son and bringing him to his basketball practice, it was gone. It all kind of came and went because I met it in this way. If I just had continued to let the shame go, the self-critical mind continue on, if I had just continued to ruminate maybe on like why these people are so bad and how angry I am about that, if I allowed my mind to just continue to do that, I could have been stuck in this like over the whole weekend. Could have wrecked my whole weekend. I would have been in knots. My whole weekend would have been wrecked. But instead, it allowed me to kind of shift my attention. And by the way, again, I didn't like take time out to go on a weekend retreat. Not that that's anything wrong with that. It's really wonderful. I'm a big fan of like retreats. But I was able to do it just that's the whole point of tiny shifts is we can, with this kind of like 4-hour method, this all happens in the moments of our daily life. So then what happened was there I was on my son's basketball court. This comes to the reinforce, the last R. So reinforce. So if we have recognize, release, refocus, we refocus by asking a new question or calling on our wisdom that we already know. Sometimes there's sayings that really help us with that wisdom. This too shall pass. When we get to that refocus place, these sayings actually can actually have some depth to them. If we just kind of recognize and we try and refocus with like a saying, what's the gift in this? This too shall pass. We created a thing of like 100 of these. It's not very sticky, and it's sometimes spiritual bypass because we're not really honoring the feeling that's here. And so it's like the ball is wound. We didn't really loosen it. So we try and like come up with a saying or bring up some own wisdom, and it just snaps back. And we're like, why can't I get this to work? So reinforce is an important piece that most people miss. Again, once you have an experience that's like you've been successful with, meaning you've experienced some relief, you've really gotten some distance out of the stress reaction or this emotional reaction, or maybe you made repair with your partner or your child, so you feel like you're really engaged with really healthy communication as a result in that refocus stage, because we talk about relationships in here. Chapter 11 is all about relationships in here. We add a fifth R. We didn't talk about this yesterday, but recognize, release, refocus, request. So the request is kind of putting in some nonviolent communication, which is understanding the other person's needs as well as my own needs and being able to communicate effectively so that I can make a request or a compromise and create more repair or reconnection as a result of that. And then the next R, which is the fourth R, is reinforce. So what do we do there? This is where we don't want to just move on. We want to, again, in some ways, recognize what just worked, what just happened. Because we want to embed this in our short-term working memory so it's more memorable and our brain can call on it in future scenarios so that we can get better and better at this stuff, so we can get stronger, more emotional strength. And so one way of doing that is you could just kind of say like what just happened, what worked in that. But another way of doing it is kind of noticing the relief or the caring or whatever feeling is there. That's the more pleasant feeling because of what you just moved through. And closing your eyes and just sensing that physically. And literally what I like to do is literally take a snapshot in my mind. I literally kind of see the picture of this better moment that I'm living right now so that my mind can remember that this matters and I can do this too. Therefore, kind of building confidence, building memory and confidence. In the field of neuroscience, it's called emotional tagging. You want to tag the emotion, just like I guess in social media. We're like tagging it. And so it's making it more memorable. So those are the four things: recognize, release, refocus, reinforce. And we can do this in the ordinary moments of our everyday life. We don't have to take any other time out to do it unless, again, with the refocus, you're like, you know what I need? I need to go take time out I need to go exercise. I need to eat some food. I need to go make myself a meal because I'm starving right now. I need to go take time to meditate. Right now, would really support me is going to do some yoga. Like, so if in the refocus, there's a need to kind of take more space to do something, that might happen. But that's because we're making a choice in the ordinary moments of our lives because we have a need that's going to support us.
I love all of these things. So many incredible tools. I love when you say there's a difference between AI and NI, artificial intelligence and natural intelligence. And I just want to reiterate that we don't have to ask Google for the answers to our questions. We can ask ourselves and we will hear the answer. We really will. And that is kind of one of the things that you say. You also talk about AI as artificial intimacy.
That's something that comes from Esther Perel. Esther
Well,
Perel, yeah, initially, so I kind of reiterate that in the book, but the she initially kind of came up with that term. Yeah.
yeah, well, I thought it was genius. And there's just so many different tools that you just gave us to be able to understand what is actually working and lock it in, closing your eyes and just recognizing what works so you can remember it for the next time. There's so many incredible tools in here. I know that we're, wow, time is flying. What? So I would love to maybe
Come to
now.
the Sunday event if you're local. Yeah.
Yes, I would love to do now that time is flying so much, maybe a 3-minute meditation
Mhm.
to help us in those moments when we notice how we're feeling and we're about to scorch the village. One of your natural ways to shift,
Yeah.
if you can share something with us or guide us through an experience.
Sure. In doing that, it wasn't everyone here then. It might be helpful. Think about, and it could have been this morning or could have been sometime earlier this week or yesterday or something like that. Think of like a mildly challenging experience that you had where you had some kind of emotional reaction. Could have been a moment you were snapping at your kid or parent, or a moment in traffic, or it could have been um, some kind of challenge that was there, something where there was kind of a stressful moment. I'm going to give you a minute to just reflect on maybe what that is. Okay, and so now allowing that to kind of cycle in your mind a little bit, make it as vibrant as you need to. Who was there? What was happening? Take a moment to notice your body and see where you might be holding this reaction. Where is your body bracing or heavy? You might even be curious about what you might name this loop that you're in: the frustration loop, the stress loop, the overwhelm loop, the I don't want to be where I am loop, self critical loop. And taking a moment to take a breath in and allow the exhalation to be a little bit longer. And do this one more time now and see if you can slightly soften your body, even just by a tiny bit. Don't need to resolve the body completely, but just seeing if you can soften just a little bit. That's all we're after. And so reflecting on that moment and asking yourself, with everything that's going on right now, what would most support me? What would most serve the next 30 seconds? how do I want to show up in this moment? Now, as best you can, seeing yourself following through with that. See yourself following through with whatever answers came to you. See it happening in your mind. And then noticing as you do that how you're feeling. How's your body feeling? Maybe what emotion might be present? Or pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, maybe something more specific. And taking a moment to lock that in. You can put your hand on your body. That's one way of doing that. You can smile towards it. You can take a snapshot in your mind where you arrived to. Remembering that this is possible and this matters. Okay. And now finally, just acknowledging yourself for even creating these few minutes to engage in this practice. Opening your eyes, wiggling your toes, rolling your shoulders. And maybe taking a moment to either you can chat in, or I don't know how Susie wants to run this event, if you want to have people unmute, but just kind of maybe share what you noticed in that.
I would love for some people to unmute. If anybody wants to share how they felt, let's share.
I can share.
Christina Joy.
Hello. That was everything that you talked about was amazing. And I typed like how useful this is in working with our own clients, right? Just in regulating and naming something. And something I've been feeling for so long or experiencing is a lot of overwhelm, but it's coming from so many different things. So being able to just get still and like recognize, oh, it's this, it's this. And sometimes it's just so basic, like you need to just unplug from everything and everyone tugging at you and take care of your body and drink more water and go move. That was kind of like the basic thing that came up is really calling my energy back to me and doing. Sometimes it's not a very big profound spiritual thing. Sometimes it's just move your body, drink more water, and eat healthy today. So that's something that came to me in the 3 minutes was, don't try to solve everything, just go do this really simple thing for you today. So
Beautiful. And in fact,
thank you for that.
when you do try and overhaul things or solve everything, the brain says threat, 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 and then it just
Hmm.
doesn't it gets kind of fogged up or doesn't do anything. And so yeah, that was beautiful. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, I can just do these kind of small things in my day, these small pivots,
Tiny shifts.
little tiny
Any
shifts.
chefs?
Yeah.
Deborah, you.
Yes, thank you for this. Yesterday, I spent time with an aunt who is basically terminal. She is terminal, and we cried together. And I'm very empathetic. I'm an empath, so I contain a lot of emotions and stress from other people.
Hmm.
Of course, I'm sad about it too. And I try so hard to be strong all the time for everybody else, and I'm containing it, which shows up in other forms chronically and physically.
Hmm.
And this meditation helped open a door and a release, like a release to cry, a permission to cry, permission to be weak and vulnerable. And I appreciate that because it dissipates what can be happening within my body over time. So I
Hmm.
thank you for that.
Yeah, crying is a great release. When I was in my doctoral program, so the question there and the refocus is like, can I just allow myself to weep? Can I just allow myself to release? And it's like a little voice says yes. And then there was a woman who did her doctoral dissertation years ago when I was graduate school called Sacred Weeping.
I
I
love
love that view of it. Yeah.
Sacred weeping. Elaine.
Wow, thank you. I just love how you're combining the body and the neuroscience to the loops that we get into and how we do have the power to get out of them just by being in the moment. I experienced a situation a couple of weeks ago where there was a younger person who was up for a job that I'm up, that I was up for, and the feelings of to get to really get to the real feeling. First I thought, oh, is it jealousy? Is it fear? But the real feeling when you said the loop, the real feeling was that not enough,
Uh-huh.
not enoughness. And how many times do I have that not enoughness loop?
Mm-hmm.
So just identifying that was so it brought about a clarity. And so I was able to then ask the question, is that true that I'm not enough?
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept pouring in from that wisdom of how talented I am, how experienced I am, how beautiful I am. I had all of that. It and it had nothing to do with the other person. It had to do with my my owning my enoughness, no matter what happens.
Mm.
So that was really a gift. Thank you so much.
Wow, powerful. In here through tiny shifts, there's a thread of my own experience around not enoughness, and it's a thread that moves through the entire book till the end, where there's a resolution around it. You'll find, yeah.
Wow.
Can't wait to find the book. And then just also, what are you doing on Sunday? I'm not following you now. What are you?
So he will be at Unplug Studio live from 3:30 to 5 p.m. giving a talk. You'll get to meet Elijah Goldstein and you'll be able to buy his book there and he'll sign it for you.
Yeah, and we'll be in discussion with Susan Kaiser Greenland there, who will also be there. She'll be kind of like interviewing me. That'll be a live event. She's a really wonderful teacher too. Yeah.
Incredible. Okay, so are there any other questions? And if not, we have a bunch of questions from people who have sent them in. Okay, we can go to that. I just have to figure out how to make this smaller. Maybe Jelena, can you ask the first question? Jelena Dixon.
Sure, let me see. First question is how to release my daily anxiety? Question mark.
How to release my daily anxiety? That's the question. Yeah, I think that I'd start by just acknowledging, like we don't need to win a war on anxiety. Like we don't need to like solve anxiety. I think our mind kind of wants to solve it, and it's like I got to get rid of this thing. I got to kind of we don't need to do that. We want to start smaller, like we're talking about here. The first thing is just can it be enough just initially just to recognize that it's here. That what how does it show up in me? Like how does it show up physically? What kind of thoughts are associated with it? So if we kind of look at the emotional loop, we know the emotion is anxiety. Anxiety is typically fear and uncertainty together. That's why there's so much of it in our culture right now, because people, the news. I don't blame everything on the news, but I will say, just to be clear, that because we're living in an age of the algorithm to some degree, and people are constantly querying, like how do I get to the base of the people's brains with this headline, so that they'll pay attention for longer or follow me or share this or whatever. And people, when you listen to YouTube videos, people will kind of be weaving it throughout their videos to make sure that we're kind of like hooked into it. It's all kind of like very strategically done for a lot of people, and so and for the news and media certainly as well. So we want to kind of notice like what kind of thoughts that are associated with it. What's the emotions, anxiety, our body's doing this, and what do we do as a result of it? What's our behavior? So, first we just need to recognize. Is it enough just to recognize at first? Then, once I become a little bit more familiar, can it just be enough to kind of play with this release function? So, what am I releasing? I'm releasing the physiological reaction. Like, where do I notice the bracing in my body? If it's my heart rate that's high, well, I want my heart rate to slow down. There's a variety of techniques we can do in the moment to support heart rate reduction. That the one we did before, which was like kind of counting or breathing in but a little longer exhale. We still want to send safety signals to our brain. Can I just kind of play with this for right now? I'm going to play with ways of releasing. Do I need to shake out my body? Do I need to exercise as a form of release? Do I need to talk with someone as a form of release? Different ways to release in the moment. Do I need journalism as a form of releasing? And so can it be enough just to do that? Then what questions is my mind asking me right now? How is XYZ going to be a disaster if it happens? Or all the things that might go wrong? Or what questions am my mind asking? And so how can I refocus with different questions? Play with refocusing with different questions, or play with grabbing for things that I know are supportive for me. But first I need to go through this recognize and release. So we want to just start small.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to solve the anxiety or win anxiety. We just want to kind of allow ourselves to meet it with these tiny pivots. And I would say that's the way. So like have some patience around, or I can't say have patience, because it's like anxiety is the opposite of patience. It's like impatience on steroids. And so, but we just want to kind of see it, allow this to be enough right now. Just the recognition. See if I can do that for a week. Then see if I can, yeah.
I want to talk about the book for another quick second, because I feel like a lot of people are listening to audiobooks now. I know that I'm guilty of that. I mostly listen to audiobooks, but this is not, even though there may be an audiobook of this, I would not do the audiobook, because you're going to want to really write down, underline, and circle all of these tools and keep coming back to them. So I just wanted to say that one thing. For our final question, because we only have 2 minutes, and then of course I hang out a little bit longer. You are living in the digital age like the rest of us. You have a business like a lot of us.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to work with, all of the information that's coming at you at one time, plus also be on platforms. What is your relationship with digital media, and what is your best advice on how to kind of disconnect in a world where you actually have to be connected?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm part of the. What has this been like since 2007? So for the last almost 20 years, we've been trained. Everyone's been trained, in our attention and focusing and fracturing and that kind of thing. I do. Sometimes for me, I need to take apps off of my phone. Like I need to take social media off my phone for a period of time. It's a little bit like alcoholism, where you need to have it out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go through breaks where I kind of just take it out of the house for a little while. And I notice that what's interesting when I do that, or if I go on a retreat, like what's interesting is so this is why I know that it's an anxiety issue. It's not an addiction issue. When they talk about social media, it's like an addiction. The reason it's for me anyway, my experience, and I think for a lot of people's experience, if I take it off my phone or I go on a retreat, I don't have the urges and cravings so much. It very quickly kind of goes away because it's not there. It's an anxiety issue because there's an underlying checking that happens when it's available. And so it's not something to take it off my phone. I also have something called Screen Zen on my phone, too, which creates enough friction and you can set it to like how many times you're able to kind of go on to something, which I unplug, someone said. That's good. But I like to kind of create friction around it. I can go on I choose to go on a walk and not have my phone. The other issue with the phone is that when you have a family, want to be available if someone needs to connect with you, and everything else is so slippery on here. So that's why these kind of friction, these things around creating friction around it, or deleting things that aren't necessarily necessary for a period of time and then kind of putting them back on when you want to, making it so that you only need to access these things by your computer and not by your phone, because the phone is the place that most people are going to access this. And so these are all like kind of methods I deploy. But look, I'm certainly guilty of, especially during a book launch. A book launch is like, I'm going to be, this event just happened. I'm going to be kind of posting that. Likely I have someone that helps me as well, but like, this is something that's really cool. How's, what's it selling now? That kind of thing. So, when you get
Wow.
excited, that's how that works. But these
Well,
are the things that help.
I want to say thank you so much. It's 101, so I just want everybody to know in case they have meetings that we're 1 minute over time. But this was beautiful. I am so excited for your live and just that I get to hang out with you 3 times this week
Oh
and
yeah.
your family. It's just been such a pleasure and it's such a learning experience. I hope you all have felt the exact same way, and we will keep this live in the Unplug app. You'll also see it on YouTube and several other places and podcasts.